Okay, so observability is basically the next step in managing infrastructure. We are all very familiar with monitoring and infrastructure, or maybe monitoring and managing, but we see the limits. So IT is evolving a lot, obviously, and we see that traditional environments move on, and we kind of need different solution to control this. So just as an idea, we need deeper visibility. We need a little bit more automation. We need to bring teams together. We can talk about that in a few minutes. And we need to be able to integrate modern IT, so hybrid clouds, multi-clouds, a very decentralized application delivery. So lots of changes in IT, and we need to adjust our solutions to deal with the next challenges in the market. We try to assist businesses to keep their lifelines running. So you could probably say that in the past, IT was supporting the business. I think that's a way to say it. But nowadays, IT is basically, well, it is the business. We know all those fancy businesses who run like marketplaces, etc., who are very, very popular, like Airbnb or whatever. This is basically just an application. So applications and infrastructure is extremely important for each business around the globe. Doesn't matter if it's a small one or it's a multinational organization. Now, and you can probably imagine if one part of this very fragile construct doesn't work as expected, there will be slowness, there will be downtime, stuff doesn't work as expected. And if you now look at how we humans, we get more and more impatient, okay? If we want to go to like an online shop and want to buy a pair of shoes and the shop is slow in responding, we move on. We go to a different company. That means one business lost us as a customer and we move on, okay? So to prevent this from happening, it is important to be able to control the environment and make sure it is as performant as possible. And that basically is what our tools do. We increase availability, we make stuff easier to use because we link information from various layers. And if there's anything wrong, we provide, or at least we try to provide assistance so the IT teams notice that there is going to be a problem before a user or a customer notices this. If you look at, let's say, it doesn't matter if it's a traditional or a modern IT department, there's multiple layers, as we just discovered. There's applications, there's the network, there's clouds included, whatever. And these are loads of individual elements which probably don't make too much sense if you look at them from an individual point of view. As a business, you are interested in the bigger picture. What does it mean for me? If I'm in, let's say I'm a hotel, okay? So if my business is a hotel, then I'm interested in how many rooms are booked in an hour, just as an average KPI. So this is something that is of value for me. So it is important that whatever we try in the background helps improving that number and keeping it up. And that is kind of where different technologies come into play who will provide those backgrounds to be able to book online, provide all the technology in the background that brings those things together. Plus, of course, folks like us who provide software that is able to control this and bring it together, that we actually see this KPI or this metric of rooms per hour. And that is obviously interesting to different personas in a business, not just the IT team, but quite obviously sales, C-levels, etc., are very much interested in how do we do as a business, and we help summing it up. challenges, I think, is first of all complexity. And that is a little bit weird if you look at trends in IT. So when there's a new system, a new software, a new piece of hardware, every vendor has marketing statements like it's easier to use. That is actually true. So most new technology is easier to use than previous generations. But what we tend to forget is that we no longer use like a 3-tiered model for application delivery. We're no longer just on-prem. So IT as a whole is getting more complex. So there's more of those individual elements. So even if an element is easier to use, we have 20 of them instead of just 2 or 3. That is a lot of complexity, and that is one challenge. Now, if we move on from this, how do we deal with this? We have shrinking budgets for IT, not just because of the pandemic, that happened even before, but obviously situation didn't really improve during the pandemic. And shrinking budgets mean that we have less money to play with to increase headcounts, which also means that there's less time and money for training, for upskilling employees in IT teams and beyond. So there's kind of a knowledge gap too. And so the second challenge basically being then helping understanding new technology in a little bit of an easier way. So obviously there's loads of other challenges. You mentioned security earlier. That is another challenge too. More individual elements mean more risks, I guess. And obviously, if an organization has access to tools that spot anomalies, it's very helpful, even if those are not primarily security-focused software, like, I don't know, a DLP or something like that. I would say, first of all, observability is what you make out of it, right? It's not a norm. There's nothing behind it that is set in stone. So we can probably interpret it in a different way. It's kind of a process that started with monitoring, which was a question in the beginning. And monitoring is will collect loads of metrics and probably make sense out of those metrics and provide focused dashboards, etc. So we see data that we collect. Observability goes a few steps beyond that. So what we try to get a little bit more of end-to-end visibility. So what does a small delay in one of those parts, as we discussed it earlier, what does it mean for the end user? What is the impact in the big picture? How much time does it take me to find the root cause of an issue? That is another very interesting aspect. And observability is trying to lower this specific time. As I said, it's a path, it's a work in progress, and there's still loads of stuff which is not yet really available because we all have to work on this. So that means not just SolarWinds, but also the competition. But in general, you would probably look at technologies like a little bit more automation to remove the stress on an IT team. Keep in mind, shrinking headcounts, so everyone has to work a little bit more efficient. Obviously, other things is like bringing teams together. I mentioned that in a little bit earlier. If you look at an IT department, so a bigger department, you have different IT teams, and bringing those together will not only remove a lot of friction, but also improve the agility. So it's definitely good for the business. Which means that we need to look at technologies like AI ops. So we need a little bit more intelligence based on actual data collected in an environment, which helps the decision-making process. And it doesn't really matter if it's a machine or if it's a human who would actually decide when is something red or green, so when is something normal or not. And this basically, observability will help bringing those elements together too. So the data collected, some machine learning, or maybe artificial intelligence, and obviously the humans on the other end of the spectrum. Yeah, what should they do? Obviously, they should be able to provide assistance to the users a little bit more faster than before, and not just individual tools. Like, I think there's independent research available where an outcome was like, how many tools does an organization use to monitor and manage IT? And even for the network, bigger companies use 20 different tools. So what does an observability product, what is the requirement? Replacing tools, right? Obviously, it's not possible to replace all tools which are in use in an organization, but some level of consolidation is more than beneficial, I would say. As you could probably imagine, if you investigate in a problem and you need to jump between 5 or 6 different tools, that's time consuming, and there's no way to build correlations. You have to build them with your mind. And if a tool is able to build those correlations for the user, that is a big win. So I would consider that as something that an observability system has to deliver. There's loads of other things. I don't want to go too technical, but I mentioned already the automation, the level of automation, AI ops. There's some other statements called full stack observability, which means we look into those different elements. So to give you an idea, traditionally application delivery was like a 3-tiered approach. We had a client, something that we use on a desktop. We have a server, an application server, and that guy usually talked to a database in the background, okay? So while that is still the case for some businesses, the majority of applications are now decentralized. That is hybrid clouds. We have a little bit of information in one cloud, a little bit of information in a different cloud, multi-cloud, okay? And the observability has to be able to deal with such a system. There's loads of moving parts, and in multi-cloud in particular, monitoring elements doesn't work anymore because there's different KPIs, there's different level of access, and an observability system will be able to talk to those different vendors. So we look at hyperscalers like AWS and Azure, different metrics, and you can't really compare it. So a solution has to sit in the background that's able to compare this.